In chapter 13, we're going to talk about the other kind of cell division, which in animals is the kind of cell division that is used to make gametes or our reproductive cells. So we're going to get a chance to talk a little bit about sexual and asexual reproductive cycles in this chapter as well. So again, we're still, focusing on this special principle of life, this ability of living organisms to create more of their own kind. And to create more of the human kind or the animal kind, right, we have to go through sexual reproduction. And oftentimes when we think about reproduction, we think about, our own families and, thinking about how, well, I come from my biological mother and biological father. I look a lot like one of them over the other, or maybe you're a really good mix. And oftentimes you think about, well, how did I end up the way that I ended up? Why do I look more like one parent or the other? Or why am I a really good blend? Or why am I more susceptible to a certain disease because it runs in my family? So we think about these things. And these things that we are thinking about are in fact heredity, variation, and genetics, all defined on this particular slide. So heredity is the transmission of traits from one generation to the next, right? How did you get your mom's freckles? How did you get your dad's blue eyes? And then also variation, right? So you are not exactly like one parent or the other, right? There are certain traits you get from one side of the family versus the other side of the family. And then if you think about brothers and sisters, if you have any, right? You all likely come from the same biological parents, and yet you might look totally different from each other, even though you came from the same gene pool, right? How does that happen? And so this study of both heredity and variation is really what we call genetics. And so in this chapter, we'll talk about meiosis and sexual reproduction. And then in chapters 14 and 15, we get a chance to really dive into Mendelian genetics and then variations of other genetic occurrences that can happen that deviate a little bit from normal Mendelian genetics as we know them. Okay, so maybe a little bit of review here, a little bit of new information. Remember that when you inherit traits from your parents, they don't directly give you a specific trait, right? What you are inheriting are genes that code for these particular traits. And we know that genes typically will code for some sort of cellular product, typically a protein. And that protein will perform a function within your body, and that leads to the trait that you can see, as your outward appearance. Right, so for example, if you have your mom's freckles, right? When you're born, your mom doesn't give you a little satchel of freckles and say, here you go. Instead, she passed on a gene from her genome to your genome that would code for a protein that maybe is an enzyme that creates pigment that gets placed into your skin, and that's what gives rise to the freckles that you see on your body that are similar to what she has. Now, genes are all going to be located on the chromosomes in the nuclei of your cells. And we've talked about chromosomes before. Most DNA is packaged into these chromosomes that are found in the nucleus of eukaryotic cells. There are exceptions to the rule, right? We talked about how mitochondria and chloroplasts have their own DNA. But when we think about the chromosomes that are located in the nucleus for eukaryotic cells, let's go back to a discussion of the two different kinds of cells that we have, right? So for humans, right, we've got our somatic cells, we've got our gametes, and they each have a distinct number of chromosomes. Somatic cells, remember, are always going to have two sets of chromosomes. And so for human cells, this means a total of 46 chromosomes. So if 46 is two sets, that means that one set of chromosomes in a human has 23 chromosomes in it. And recall that your somatic cells are going to be just your normal body cells that have nothing to do with reproduction. And so these somatic cells, we call them diploid cells, and we abbreviate them using the symbol 2N. A lowercase n stands for one set of chromosomes. So a diploid cell having two sets of chromosomes, we would call that 2N. Now, the other kind of cells you have in your body are your gametes. So depending on whether you're male or female, this would be sperm or egg. These are the cells that pass on genomes, pass on genes to the next generation through sexual reproduction. And gametes are going to be different from the somatic cells in that they only have one set of chromosomes. So we call these cells haploid. We abbreviate them as just being N, again, where N stands for a single set of chromosomes. And so in a human, a single set of chromosomes is 23 chromosomes. All right, so somatic cells have 46, 2 sets, 23. Gametes only have one set of chromosomes. In human, that's just 23 chromosomes. Now, when we look at one set of chromosomes in the human, so the full 23, these are 23 different chromosomes. 22 of them are boring. We call these guys the autosomes, and they code for mundane things like enzymes that participate in metabolism. And then there's that 23rd chromosome, the last one. And this one is important because it's called the sex chromosome. In humans, there are 2 different kinds of sex chromosomes. There's the X chromosome and there's the Y chromosome. Each set of chromosomes only has one of these, either an X or a Y. When you are created, you get one set of chromosomes from your mom and one set of chromosomes from your dad. So your mom gives you a sex chromosome and your dad gives you a sex chromosome, and that will determine your gender. If you inherit 2 X's, so an X from your mom and an X from your Y, you're going to be a human female. On the other hand, if you inherit an X from your mom and a Y from your dad, having an X and a Y chromosome, you will develop as a human male. So the sex chromosomes are what determine gender in our species. All right, so when you think about the whole person, right, and your somatic cells have a total of 46 chromosomes, really, you're getting 23 chromosomes from your mom, 23 chromosomes from your dad. You have 2 sets. So that means that for every chromosome that you get from your mom, you have a matching half or pair from your dad's set of chromosomes. So every chromosome has a matching pair from the other parent. And this special pair of chromosomes is called a homologous pair or homologous chromosome, or if that's a mouthful, we can also just call them homologs. Now, homologous chromosomes are unique because they are the same length, they are the same shape, and they carry genes controlling the same inherited characters at the same positions. And this gene-specific position along a chromosome is called a locus. So maybe let's draw out an example of what this would look like. Okay, so if we have one chromosome from the mom and we have a chromosome from the dad, blue, these guys are going to be homologs, right? They're the same length. They are also the same shape, meaning that the centromere here, the narrow waist, centromere, right? I drew it in the same position. So same length, same shape, and they have the same genes at the same positions along their lengths. So let's say on both of these chromosomes, right at this position here is where you have the gene for eye color. So you have 2 copies of this eye color gene, one on your dad's chromosome and one on the chromosome you got from your mom. It doesn't mean that these 2 genes are identical though. You might get the gene for brown eyes from your mom, and your dad might have given you the blue eye color gene instead. So it could be a different variant, but it's still a gene that codes for the same trait, right? Or for the same character. So for eye color in this case. So those are both, these guys together are called homologs or homologous chromosomes. Right, same length, same shape, carry the same genes, controlling the same inherited characters at the same position or loci.